Guess what? The world's favorite headache cure almost gave America the biggest headache of all. Before it was the go-to painkiller in every bathroom cabinet, Tylenol was part miracle, part mystery, and, for a few dark weeks in 1982, part horror story. This is the tale of how a 25-cent pill changed medicine, saved millions, terrified the nation, and somehow got dragged into modern politics. So pop a metaphorical painkiller. We're about to unpack the surprisingly dramatic history of Tylenol. This is Guess What?, where curiosity might ease your pain, but side effects may include mild disbelief and historical whiplash. Tylenol's story begins in the 1800s, back when medical breakthroughs usually came from happy accidents, or accidental poisonings. In 1856, an 18-year-old British chemistry student named William Perkin was trying to synthesize a malaria drug from coal tar. Yes, that thick black industrial gunk scraped out of smokestacks. But, as with most fledgling scientists, he made a mistake. Instead of creating the intended drug, his experiment turned a brilliant shade of purple. He'd accidentally created the world's first synthetic dye, mauvine, and changed chemistry forever. Overnight, coal tar went from factory waste to scientific gold. Chemists realized this stinky black sludge was packed with complex carbon compounds, benzene, phenol, aniline, the very building blocks of life. It could be transformed into dyes, perfumes, disinfectants, even medicines. Once chemists realized these same aromatic compounds could affect the body, not just fabric, the race was on to find the next miracle molecule. Enter 1877. Harmon Northrop Morse, a young chemist at Johns Hopkins University, was tinkering with the same coal tar byproducts. Out of that mess, he synthesized a new compound, acetaminophen. And no, it didn't bubble up into a perfect little pill. After boiling, filtering, and crystallizing, Morse was left with a chalk-white powder, pure acetaminophen. He noted it could lower fever in test subjects, though no one really understood why. But medicine in the 19th century had the attention span of a goldfish. Scientists promptly forgot about acetaminophen and moved on to other compounds that, naturally, turned out to be toxic. Ah, the good old days. A few years later, in 1886, two German doctors, Arnold Kahn and Paul Hepp, accidentally rediscovered the fever-reducing effect while trying to treat a patient's intestinal worms. The pharmacist mixed up the prescription and gave the wrong coal tar compound, acetanilide. The worms stayed, the fever vanished, and thus the world's first antipyretic, fever-reducing drug was born entirely by mistake. However, although acetanilide did work in terms of reducing fever, it also caused methemoglobinemia, a condition that literally turned people's blood chocolate brown and starved their tissues of oxygen. Fast forward to the 1940s. Researchers at the University of Rochester revisited these old coal tar compounds and realized that acetaminophen was the safe metabolite behind them all. It eased pain and reduced fever without shredding the stomach lining like aspirin, a big deal in an era when ulcers were practically a personality trait. Then came 1955. McNeil Laboratories launched Tylenol Elixir for Children, marketed as aspirin-free relief. For parents terrified of stomach irritation or Reye's syndrome, it was an answered prayer. Within a decade, Tylenol wasn't just medicine, it was trust in a bottle. Parents swore by it, doctors recommended it, a miracle drug born from industrial waste. Somehow, that's both inspiring and deeply unsettling. By the 1960s and 70s, Tylenol had gone from lab discovery to national staple. It was gentle on the stomach, available without a prescription, and came in every form imaginable: tablets, syrups, chewables, and eventually those iconic red and blue capsules. Johnson & Johnson, which owned McNeil, saw the potential and went all in. Tylenol became their crown jewel, the safe painkiller, especially compared to aspirin, which had a reputation for stomach bleeding and heartburn. TV ads showed smiling families and doctors in white coats saying, "For pain relief, doctors recommend Tylenol." The phrasing was technically true. Many doctors did recommend it, but also brilliantly manipulative. You can almost hear the marketing team high-fiving. By the late 70s, Tylenol controlled over 1/3 of the U.S. painkiller market. But success came with a dark irony. The same chemical that made it safe in normal doses could be deadly in high ones. Acetaminophen doesn't show symptoms right away when overdosed. Your stomach doesn't hurt, you don't vomit. Your liver just quietly begins to shut down. So Tylenol's slogan could have been, gentle on your stomach, brutal on your liver. And that balance, safety through precision, would haunt it for decades. Then came 1982, the year everything changed. In late September, 7 people in the Chicago area suddenly collapsed and died. Investigators traced the link. Each had taken extra-strength Tylenol capsules that had been tampered with and laced with potassium cyanide, one of the deadliest poisons on Earth. The victims were ordinary people: a 12-year-old girl, a new mother, a flight attendant. There was no connection between them. Different families, different neighborhoods, different stores. The only common thread? Tylenol. The randomness made it terrifying. Within hours, the story hit every major network. Panic spread like wildfire. Parents flushed pills, hospitals warned patients, and grocery stores stripped entire shelves bare. Overnight, America's most trusted medicine became a symbol of fear. At first, police thought it might be a manufacturing accident, until they discovered that the tainted bottles came from different factories, different batches, and different stores. There was no cyanide anywhere in the production process, which meant only one thing. Someone out there had gone store to store, bottle to bottle, opening capsules, filling them with cyanide, and putting them back on the shelves. Then, just days after the murders, the story took another dark twist. A man named James William Lewis mailed a letter to Johnson & Johnson, claiming responsibility and demanding $1 million to stop the killings. Investigators tracked him down, but it turned out he lived in New York, hundreds of miles away from Chicago. He was charged not with murder, but with extortion, and served 13 years in prison. To this day, he maintains he was only trying to help the police, which is possibly the worst excuse ever written on FBI letterhead. Johnson & Johnson, meanwhile, faced a brand apocalypse, but their response became the gold standard for corporate crisis management. Instead of denial or spin, they recalled 31 million bottles nationwide, the largest recall in pharmaceutical history, and worked hand-in-hand with the FBI and the FDA. They didn't stop there. They reinvented packaging itself, introducing tamper-evident seals, foil lids, and safety caps, innovations that now protect everything from vitamins to ketchup packets. No one was ever convicted of the murders, but the case changed how the world handles consumer safety forever. Tylenol nearly died that year, but its comeback became corporate legend. Imagine turning a mass poisoning into a masterclass in ethics. That's not marketing, that's resurrection. After surviving the cyanide scare, Tylenol went right back to America's medicine cabinet, but another, quieter danger remained. Acetaminophen's therapeutic dose and its toxic dose are uncomfortably close. A couple of extra tablets, especially mixed with alcohol, can cause irreversible liver damage. Throughout the 80s and 90s, emergency rooms saw rising cases of overdose, sometimes accidental, sometimes intentional. The antidote, N-acetylcysteine or NAC, could reverse the damage if given quickly, but most people didn't know it existed. By the 2000s, regulators stepped in. Labels began warning, severe liver damage may occur if you take more than directed. Doctors emphasized not to mix Tylenol with alcohol. a rule as often ignored as don't text and drive. Even today, acetaminophen is the leading cause of acute liver failure in the U.S., yet it's also a commonly recommended first-line pain reliever for many patients. That's not hypocrisy. It's the razor's edge of modern medicine, safe when respected, deadly when abused. And just when we thought Tylenol had no more surprises, the 2010s gave us a twist worthy of a sci-fi subplot. Psychologists discovered that acetaminophen doesn't just dull physical pain, it also blunts emotional pain. Studies showed participants taking Tylenol reacted less strongly to rejection, guilt, or distressing images. In other words, Tylenol can literally take the edge off your feelings. That sounds convenient until you realize it might make you less empathetic. One study suggested that people who took acetaminophen were less upset by others' suffering. The same pill that cures heartbreak might also numb compassion. It's a fascinating and slightly terrifying thought that one of humanity's most common drugs can quietly tweak our emotional wiring. So yes, Tylenol might make heartbreak hurt less, but it might also make you a little less human while doing it. Fast forward to the 2020s, and Tylenol found itself back in the headlines, this time over pregnancy. Some studies began linking prenatal exposure to acetaminophen with higher risks of developmental issues like ADHD and autism. News outlets ran with the story, social media caught fire, and parents panicked. But here's where nuance matters. These studies show correlation, not causation. The data isn't conclusive, and the FDA, along with most medical associations, still considers Tylenol the safest pain reliever for pregnant women when used correctly. Doctors stress moderation, minimal dose, minimal duration. The advice remains, if you need it, use it, but don't overuse it. Still, fear spreads faster than facts. The story of Tylenol's possible link to neurodevelopmental disorders became a cultural flashpoint, less about science, more about anxiety in an age that distrusts everything. And of course, because this is modern America, it eventually got political. During the COVID-19 pandemic, confusion over which painkillers were safest sent sales of Tylenol soaring. The World Health Organization briefly cautioned against ibuprofen, and suddenly acetaminophen was flying off shelves faster than toilet paper. A few years later, the debate over the autism studies reignited, not just in labs, but in Congress and cable news studios. Some politicians called for new safety reviews. Others accused scientists of fear-mongering. Most recently, in September 2025, the Trump administration discussed whether the government should intervene with new warnings. Suddenly, Tylenol wasn't just medicine, it was a talking point. There is no doubt that it is important to stay vigilant and continue to question our doctors and scientists about the medicines we use. That's how science moves forward. But skepticism works both ways. We can't ignore data just because it's inconvenient, and we shouldn't fear what isn't yet proven. Medicine deserves our questions and our patience for answers. On that note, to reiterate, as of October 2025, the evidence linking Tylenol with neurodevelopmental outcomes remains associative, not causal, as reviews in Nature Reviews Endocrinology and the Yale School of Public Health both note. Tylenol's story isn't just about chemistry, it's about culture. We want relief, instantly and risk-free. We want control over our pain and our problems. But nature and science don't work that way. Every cure has a cost. Every medicine has a shadow. Tylenol reminds us that even the most ordinary product can reveal something profound: our need for comfort, our fear of uncertainty, and our tendency to forget that safety isn't the same as invincibility. It's not perfect, but then again, neither are we. From coal tar to corner stores, Tylenol has survived corporate disasters, moral panics, and scientific scrutiny. It's been both villain and hero, The pill that killed trust, then rebuilt it stronger. It taught the world about responsibility, transparency, and the delicate balance between faith in medicine and fear of it. If anything, Tylenol's real legacy isn't about pain relief, it's about resilience, both the company's and ours. So from tragedy to triumph, from chemistry lab to conspiracy theory, Tylenol's journey proves that even a tiny white pill can have a massive cultural hangover. That's today's episode of Guess What? If you enjoyed walking carefully through history with me, hit subscribe, because next time, who knows what we'll uncover? Until then, stay curious, and remember, read the label before you reach for relief.